Welcome back everyone to the next part in our series of creating a accounting software program using Laravel as a foundation. And if you followed the previous videos, you'll see that we've made a bit of progress. We've concentrated on mainly on the nominal side of things with nominal accounts and nominal ledgers. Sorry, we're going to get to nominal ledgers in a bit, but with the nominal accounts. And we also managed to create a trial balance. So I'll bring up the page. Let's see. So we have, yeah, I think there we go. So we had the nominal accounts, which, yeah, we just provided a list there. We haven't done any formatting, as you can tell. And then we made a link to the trial balance. So, I mean, obviously all this needs to be linked in properly. But we did the trial balance, and you can see over here on the right that for each of the accounts here, we generated some figures. And when we were doing that in Laravel, we did that by just providing some dummy data with the seeds. So in the database seeder, it just means that if we ever want to change the data, we just have to run the seeder again with the new changes, and it's done. We don't have to manually go through the process of adding data for the new feature or the update. So that's where we are. So let's get started now. I want to now concentrate on maybe tidying up a bit of the code and looking at now expanding a bit more into the various ledgers. Obviously I've just mentioned the nominal one, but we're going to look at some others as well and see if we can do that. But I want to concentrate a little bit on tidying the code. So we'll come to that in a sec. So let's get started. Okay, so here we are in the app, the Laravel app, and you'll remember in the nominal accounts controller we just had the normal CRUD methods there, and then we had this trial balance. I'll just put a comment in there just to separate it out a bit more. So we had our trial balance method, which was quite extensive for a controller method, a bit too extensive. Really, which is one of the reasons why I'm looking to change this. And it effectively went down all the transactions and got values for them, and then added them onto the current sort of standing values for each of the nominal accounts, so that there was like a running total of balances for each nominal account. So you'll have seen that in more detail in the previous videos. But it doesn't really belong here in the controller. This code here is way too much, and I was thinking maybe at some future time I'll refactor this and move it out, but to be honest, if we're going to use this code properly, I'm thinking really we need to move it out now. And there's a number of ways we can do that. You'll see different patterns. One of them I've been working on recently is the repository pattern. So you treat the models purely as references to existing models. So the model class that you have in app models, you only really use that to hydrate and then use an existing model. Whereas if you were dealing with a collection of models, so for example the model class, you can create a new model. Now I think that's okay because it retains an instance of a model, so I'm quite happy for that to stay in the model class. But you certainly wouldn't want to put stuff like list all models of this class. You know, that's not what the model is meant to be in with the repository design method. So that's one way we could possibly do it. But that's quite involved. I mean, the site I was doing that with, they did that on a general level for every model, and it works, you know. But it was quite an overhead. And right now, for the purposes of teaching, I'm not sure we need to go to that level. Another way we can do this is to use traits. A trait is effectively like, I suppose a trait is to a class as what a struct is to an object, I suppose. I don't know if that's a fair analogy. But a trait effectively is a collection of code encapsulated in one trait. And the methods inside that trait, the trait can store properties and methods, and the methods inside that trait can be accessed just by using the trait in a calling piece of code. So for example, in the nominal accounts controller here, we could use at the top of here we could use a nominal trait, for example, or even a trial balance trait if you want to really break it down. And that trial balance trait will have a method called trial balance or render if it's single use or whatever, I don't know. And then basically, because we use it here and we put a use in here, we have access to any methods in that trait as if they were native to the call and code here. So then inside here, all I have to say is if we called it, we couldn't really call it generic things like render, because if we imported a number of traits that all had render in, it might get a bit confusing. But what we could do is sort of, you know, just call something like this and call it like trait trial balance. Now let's say we were using the traits in a way where either they were single use or very, very focused. So we'd have a method in that trait called trait trial balance, and that would basically be all of this code here, and you know we'd return that. So you know we have a variable equals that trial balance, and then you know if we needed to do anything down here first, you know we do that. In fact, this might not be, this wouldn't be a variable. This will probably be some kind of object or structured array, so that we can pass it in down to the view and render it properly. So that's what I'm sort of looking to do. So what are we going to do? I think personally, for the purposes of just for now refactoring, if we stick it into a trait, we can always maybe refactor it even more, maybe you know more focused traits, and then you know maybe even use the repository pattern or some other means. Don't really know that far ahead at the minute. But let's stick it in a trait for now, and at least it cleans up our controller, because that really is what I'm looking to do. And what we can do is possibly refactor this in a more efficient way, so we can possibly use some of this code to get other stuff from the nominal accounts. But for now, let's just move it into a trait. So to do that, we don't have a traits folder at the minute, so I don't think Laravel yet still automatically, or not automatically, but allows you to create a trait using any kind of command. But it's no biggie. So create a traits folder in the app, inside the app folder, and then we'll go to new file. So we need to call it let's just call it nominal trait for now. We'll call it nominal trait. We can always break this down further later on. So let's just initialize this. So namespace is app traits. The name, so it's nominal trait. I think that must have to be a capital N. And then inside our trait here, we can just create any functions we want. And whenever we use this trait in call and code, these functions will be available. So for example, let's just make this easy for now. Public function. I don't want to call it just trial balance, because that's the name in the controller, and if we call this trial balance, I think there might be an error. So I'm just going to call it nominal trial balance. Okay, so let's go back to our controller. Let's just copy all this code. Cut it, I should say. So there was no parameters in that function, was there? I don't think. Trial balance, no. So what we need to return is the nominal accounts, the sum debit and the sum credit. So let's return that as some kind of object. So we could do return, and we could say nominal accounts sum debit, no, some debit, some credit. So let's see. Well, some credit and some debit are fairly obvious. They appear to have the same naming convention, so that's cool. So some debit can go in there, and some credit can go in there. So what about nominal accounts? It looks like it's just called nominal accounts. Okay, so let's copy that. Okay, and that'll give us an array, an associative array of that data. But I'd rather make it an object, so I think we can just do that and cast it to an object. So now let's go back into our trait. Let's just dump this and see what happens. Oh no, we have to import the trait. So now we can say use app traits, and what do we call it? Nominal trait. Okay, so that brings it in for us, and then to use it actually inside this call and code, we just go use nominal trait here. And that's it. Every function inside the trait is now available inside this controller as inside this scope. So I can now say this, and what did we call the method? Nominal trial balance. So let's copy that. This nominal trial balance. So we should get a dump of this now. Class app traits nominal account not found. Oh, I haven't made reference to the nominal account here. So I need to access the model. Hopefully that'll work. Oh, and nominal transaction. Okay. So we have what appears to be legitimate data, 6 nominal accounts, which sounds about right, and amounts on some debit and amounts on some credit. So yeah, I'm happy with that. That looks reasonable. So let's take out the dump here. So we want to assign this object, so we say actually no, we can use a nice little feature called list. Let me just see, it's not often I get to use this actually. Oh, okay. List works with an array though, so we'd have to take that object cast off. So let's try that. So if we say list list nominal accounts, some debit, some credit equals the call, but we just need to go back to the call because we cast it as an object, and now list doesn't work with an object, it works with an array, which is fine. So now these 3 variables, nominal accounts, some debit, some credit, are now here, so they should just pass through and render our trial balance. Let's have a look. Ooh, so we have an error that we didn't have before. Undefined offset 0, and that is at the nominal accounts controller, line 101. Ah, okay, so it appears that it doesn't work with a structured, with an associative array. So let's get rid of that. It just takes them in order, it looks like. Let's try that. Yeah, okay, so that's what that does. So we've got the same result, but we've just massively simplified the controller, which is how it should be. One call and then the view. And now we can break this down at some future time to make it more optimal. And even if we change the way we're getting the data, or even how the data is structured, we can do that all in the trait now. We don't have to mess with the controller, which is how it should be, really. Oh, excuse me. Okay, so that's the first thing we wanted to do. Let's have a look at the idea of these different ledgers. So I probably could do with bringing up my spreadsheet. Okay, I can't find the one we used last time, so I'm not sure if I kept that or if I just treated it as a doodle. What I want to do here is just maybe highlight the associations between what we have already and where we want to go. So there's one step first of all that I want to do. If you've watched the previous videos in this series, you remember we had the discussion about what happens if a transaction has more than two nominal codes. Because we've written the code in such a way that you have a debit code, a credit code, and an amount. That's how the data is stored in our database. So rather than having, I think the alternative was we had a nominal account and then we had a debit and a credit value, rather than this way around, which is good when you've got transactions that have more than two nominal codes for the double entry. It's easier, but it becomes maybe an issue if you want to enforce integrity of the data, because doing it this way with one amount and two codes, you can't get the double entry wrong, because you have to have two codes. So long as every line of this has a code in each, you've only got one amount that balances both, which means you can't get it wrong. You can't get the double entry wrong. That's not to say you wouldn't get errors in other ways, but you can't get the double entry wrong. So that's why we opted to go with this route. But the downside to this is if you've got a transaction that has more than two codes, then you can't do it simply. Because if we were to do it the other way, so the other way would be, how would it be? The nominal account, the debit amount, and the credit amount. So that was the other way we were going to do it. So if we have a transaction, say that's, let's just say sales 100, and if we have bank 100. Now that balances nicely as long as this data is intact and the data integrity is good, not a problem with that. But it turns out that this guy could be VAT registered, so in actual fact he would have another line called VAT of 20 and his bank would be 120. Now again, it's still fine. The two columns both add up to 120, so it balances, and that's where this comes into its own. When it's just two lines, if we were to get rid of that, this still works, and as I say, I'm sure some account programs do it this way, but there's just that risk that the double entry could break. If one of them figures gets corrupted or is miscoded or whatever it is, it's going to be a lot harder to get the double entry. So let's compare it to the way we're doing it. So we could say sales, sorry, no, that would be bank, sales 100. So the way we're doing it is we debit the bank and credit the sales in the one line of £100. But what happens when there's VAT? Well, if we put 120 in here, that would cater for the sales. That would cater for the bank, because the bank would get 120. But it doesn't cater for the sales, and it doesn't even make mentions of the VAT. So the only way we can do it is well, there was two ways of doing it, and the more nominal codes in a transaction, the more permutations of moving the data around. So for example, let's just create a few more lines here. So way one would be bank sales, but then we have to take 20 off the sales and put that into the VAT. So that's one way of doing it. The problem with that is we then have two entries in the sales, a 120 and a minus 20, because that's in the credit code, that's in the debit. So you'd have a credit of 120 and a debit of 20 for one transaction. So reconciling that is going to be a pain. The other way of doing it is matching it for the sales. So we could do the sales. We could do the bank and sales of 100, and then we could do the bank VAT of 20. Now that still gives us a credit sales of 100, credit VAT of 20, and the bank to add up to 120 debit. But again, we've got the same problem, but this time at the bank, because the bank transaction which will appear as 120 if it was deposited on its own, but here it will be itemized as two separate entries of 120. So the bank reconciliation then is going to be a little bit of an issue. It's just going to make more work. Either way, that is the downside of doing it this way, the way we've opted of doing it. So I want to try and fix that by adding in another layer that wraps around this one. Okay, so the idea is that so let's get rid of this. So the idea is, so these are nominal transactions. Each one of these lines is a nominal transaction. But what if we wrapped any sort of group of transactions that belong together inside another object, and then that object was the one that was used as a reference, but that object also allowed us to sum up the various columns so that we have complete values for each column. So imagine if we had, let's take this out, imagine if this object added up these columns and gave us at the end of it bank debit 120, sales 100, VAT 20. Now if that object encapsulated the lines inside it and gave us those figures, well, that's perfect, because we get the complete value for the bank rec, we get a single figure for the sales rec, and the VAT is a third nominal account that's catered for in the transaction. And then obviously more and more, if there's more codes in that transaction, you could have a discount code in there. There could be any number of codes that get added in, but they're all inside the one transaction. So that's what we're going to implement. I'm going to try and implement. So what I'm thinking is, if we create a new class, so let's bring up, did I bring my terminal up here? Let's bring my terminal across here. Okay. Okay, so let's clear that. So let's run artisan make model -n models, and I'm thinking if we call it nominal header, nominal account, nominal transaction. I mean, nominal transaction header sounds better, but it's a bit long-winded. Nominal header. I don't think we're going to use that for anything else. I'll try nominal header. Okay, so let's have a look at the migration for that. Okay, so nominal header has many nominal transactions. Okay, we'll come to the belongs to later. That's partly why we're setting this up. But it has many transactions, so we don't need to put that here. but it's going to need some identification, so maybe a narrative or a date. You could put some kind, well, there'll be a timestamp on there when it's created, but we might need a transaction date, which is not the date it's created. So it probably wouldn't hurt to put a date in there. Do we need a time as well? No, probably not for this. And we'll call this counter that. Yeah, that's fine. So the date is a counter that, so that's when it's the date it refers to. So what that means is we've got to make sure that any transaction that uses this has to refer to a date, but that's fine, we can make sure that's in the interface. Do we need anything else? So if I'm wrapping these, this is going to come from a ledger which we'll talk about later. Now the ledger itself will have its own narrative, as will the line that this belongs to. So do we need to put a narrative in this? I'll leave it out for now. We can always add it in later. Let's leave it out for now. So we basically just want a date on there. Now if every single nominal transaction belongs to a nominal header, we could possibly get rid of nominal transaction. We could probably get rid of the account. Oh, it was the same date. We could possibly get rid of this because that's going to be duplicated, but we'll leave it in for now, just in case it doesn't pan out that way. There's no point getting rid of it yet. But it's possible we can get rid of this because if these transactions belong to this header, then the header's the better one to have the date. There's no point having it in the transaction. But we'll leave it in for now. So that's all really we need for the migration. So we'll leave that there. Let's go to the seeder. So we created 3 transactions. So how is this going to work then with the header? So it's probably just a case of if we create the header first and then we can pass in the ID to the transaction. Oh, before we do that, we will need to put a header ID in here, won't we, as a foreign key. We'll just call it an integer for now. So that's going to be nominal header ID. Okay. We'll rerun the migration from scratch in a minute. So let's create a nominal header equals nominal header create, and in reality the only thing that was in there was a date. So what we can do is just copy this, counter that line here. But we have now nominal header, which will give us the ID that we can now pass into our transactions here. So they're the 3 transactions. So we did 3 transactions there. We did the 120, which was the bank and sales, the 20, which was the sales and VAT, and oh, rent. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll just comment this one out for now, because what we want to do is just wrap these 2 in this header. So let's just give these the header ID. So nominal header ID, and that will be nominal header ID. Nominal header ID. Okay, cool. That looks like it will work. Let's just run the migration again from scratch. So artisan migrate refresh seed. No, okay, so we've got an error. You're missing class import. Oh yeah, of course. So we need to use that. Yeah, so import that in there. Let's try again. Okay, so the migration was successful. Shouldn't really change anything we see on the screen though. Let's just check that. Other than the rent will have gone. Yeah, so the rent's gone, so that's fine. But we have the £100. I need to let me just bring these closer together for now. I need to put some kind of formatting in there. It's hard to see. Okay, so the sales is 100, the bank's 120, the VAT's 20. That's what we want. But if we break it down, we're still at the minute going to have to, well, for the purposes of the trial balance, it's fine because we don't need a breakdown. But if, for example, we had we wanted to see that bank balance broken down, so we could create a link in there and see how that's done. Let's do that. What's the best way to do that? Let's do a link off the bank balance. So we go to the trial balance, resources, views, trial balance. Okay. So let's put a link on the name. Okay, so we need a root name for this. Let's see. Let's have a look at our roots. Need to remind myself of what we've done. So we did a root resource on nominal accounts. Suppose for now we could just throw another method in there. Yeah, it's not too big a thing to throw in there at the minute. So let's throw in nominal accounts, and we'll call that activity. Don't want to call it. It's basically index, but on a specific account. So we'll call it activity. So nominal accounts, and so we need to put in a ID. Okay, I think that's how you do it. Let's just try the root list. Although this may error because I haven't got that controller method in place. Oh no, okay. So let's have a look. Okay, so nominal accounts activity. Okay, no, that looks, it matches the edit one, which would be the closest. So yes, so we need to just go to the controller now and add an activity method. Let's have a look in here. So public function activity, and we need to pass in the nominal account. So that's going to bring in, so we have the nominal account, so that's going to bring in the balance of the nominal account up to the point that was last done, and then we're treating everything else for now in the transactions table as stuff to add on. That's how we did it with the trial balance. So this is where maybe the trial balance code could be refactored, where if we only want it for one code, that may make the trial balance a little bit more inefficient, because then we're making it do every code individually. Well, it's probably not a bad way to refactor that code, but for now we'll just do it as a separate thing. So we have our nominal account. So let's get the nominal transactions. No, let's stick it in the trait. So we've got the trait. We just need to call a trait method. So we could say this nominal, and we could call it this account activity, and pass in the nominal account. Okay, so then in our trait, we can pass in our nominal account. Oh, wrong one. So we can pass in our nominal account. So we're looking to get a list of transactions that belong to that account. So in effect, I suppose what we could do is get the balance from the nominal account record, and then just get a collection of values from the nominal transaction table, and I suppose it wouldn't hurt to pass them as two separate things, just in case we need to do something with that. Well, yeah, because we can mark the first figure as an opening balance. So let's get the transactions. So so we have the nominal account. Now, did we create a relationship on this already? App models, nominal account. No. So we need to create a foreign key to public function nominal transactions. Return this has many nominal transaction class. Okay, so nominal transactions we can now use in our trait. So account not that didn't copy. Okay, nominal transactions equals nominal account nominal transactions. Anyone? Yeah. Can I pluck those? Maybe just get the ID with them as well. I'm not sure if that's how that works. Let's have a look. Oh, I'm not really calling it anyway, am I? So account activity. Oh, right, yeah, it was all based on that link, wasn't it? So what was the name of that? Nominal accounts activity. So let's copy that. So root nominal accounts activity. Then we want the code, which was nominal account ID. And we just need to put that on the other side of the name. Okay, let's see how that looks. Okay, so we have a link on there. It's not obvious, but you can see the hand changes. Well, let's click a link. So let's click bank balance. So unknown column in nominal transactions, nominal account ID. Of course, because a nominal transaction can link to a nominal account with two codes, can't it? If I bring up my SQL, where's my SQL? Oh, okay, so a nominal transaction has the debit and the credit, so we're going to have to manually put them in. So yeah, so this isn't going to be as straightforward because this is going to assume that the nominal transactions table is going to have a field called nominal account ID, but it doesn't. It has two fields, but they're called debit and credit. So can we combine two? I think the way to do it is let's just check this on the Laravel website. I'm sure there's a way of passing parameters in for the field name. In fact, I know there is. So if we do that's not really what I'm concerned about here, because I know all I have to do here is debit nominal transaction ID, but that only covers the one. So what I'm after is, so we say, let's pull that as a separate method. Okay, so let's copy that, and then obviously we can do this as credit. Okay, so what I want is a relationship that is actually a combination of these two relationships. Let's see if we can find that. So Laravel combine two relationships. Worst typing ever. Combine two relationships. Good old Stack Overflow. Let's see, is there a way to merge two relationships? Okay, so that looks pretty much like what we're after to do here. Try out getter method for property, which returns merge collections returned from relations. Merge. So it merges, one merges with the other. Okay, so can we if we just call this nominal transactions and go can I return debit nominal transactions merge. Ooh, I wonder if this works. This credit nominal transactions. Oh my goodness, if this works, that'll be something new I've learned. So let's see, we're calling that in the nominal account model. So let's have a look. So column not found, so we fixed that. Let's see if that fixes the other problem. No, we still have a problem. So let's see, unknown column debit nominal transaction ID. Oh, it's not transaction, is it? Debit nominal account ID. So debit, credit and debit nominal account ID. So app models nominal attractions must retain a relationship instance. Okay, so we can't retain it as a relationship. This is going to retain a collection, I assume. So okay, let's just cut that. That's a shame, really, because I would have liked to have had that as well. Maybe there's another way of doing that another time. Anyway, let's go back to our trait. So we can say, let's modify this, so let's just call this T1 for now. Debit nominal transactions. Oh no, actually we could do this all in one line if we're being really cheeky, because then we can say merge credit nominal transactions. Wow, would that work? Invalid argument supplied in for each. Okay, where was that? Okay, so yeah, it's not happy with how I've done that. Let's just take out the pluck. No, so it doesn't like something to do with that merge. Yeah, there. Invalid argument. So what's the error? Invalid argument supplied for each. So look in here. So we need to see what each of these things are returning. So let's dump that. Let's dump the credit. Okay, let's see what that brings. And oh, so that's bringing back a nominal transaction and this is bringing back nothing, but it is a collection. So do I have to check if let's do it manually. So debit transactions equals credit transactions equals transactions equals debit transactions merge credit transactions. So that's going to give me that error, isn't it? Oh no. So it just didn't like to do it in the same line, it looks like. So okay, So let's return nominal account. What was the balance on that? Nominal account amount. So that's our opening balance for that account at that point. Yeah, we'll just assume it's recent transactions. So that's our first array item, and then the second one is the list of transactions. Now, I'm assuming now we can... No, let's not bother plucking them, we'll just send the whole thing through. Okay. So, back to the controller. Account activity. So we can say list balance transactions equals okay. Normally do that as a dot. Nominal accounts activity, and then we'll pass in the balance balance and transactions. Okay, so that's gonna want a view. So nominal accounts okay, so let's just extend. Do I extend something? Oh yeah, so let's just copy that. Okay, so let's just output these here. So we have the balance and transactions. Let's see if that works. Well, there's a note. There's a transaction, so was it naught in the bank balance? Oh yeah, because we started off with naught in everything. So if I put, let's put £10 in there. Oh. Yeah, that's worked. It's doing the divide by 100 thing for the integer. So let's just make it £10 in pence. Yeah, here we go. So that's £10, and then we have a transaction. So so we used these default columns, didn't we? So let's briefly just format this out then. So let's create a whole new div. So then we want the opening balance, which is this line. So div. So what we could probably do is bring in the date of when that was updated. I'm not sure whether we store that yet, but it would probably be good to get a date. So opening balance, and then that's just going to be balance and then we just loop through the transactions as transaction, and in here, so each one of these is a row, so we're going to have what do we have in the transaction table? Well, we know, so we could do it knowing which account it goes to. If it's, we know it's obviously one of the codes is the bank. So so let's put the amount in there. So we need to put a bit of an if statement, but it's not great to do it here. We could do it doing this in the model, but we'll do it here for now. So the if statement is we want to put transaction credit nominal account ID equals we can do it passing in the actual account details. So yeah, I could do it passing this in as well. Which sort of makes that balance redundant because we've got the balance here. So we'll come back to that. So where are we? So equals nominal account ID. So if the current account we're looking at has its ID on the credit side, then we can show it in the debit column. Then we can show the debit column's ID. So that would be transaction debit nominal account name. I can't remember if I've set these relationships up, what we were doing earlier, so we may have to just build these in the class, in the model. Okay, so let's see if this works. No, I didn't think so. So we just need to set up these relationships. So this where are we? Debit nominal account and credit nominal account on the transaction. So nominal transaction, so we can say public function debit nominal account return this belongs to nominal account class, but we need to specify the field name because it's not the convention one. ID, and we just do the same for the credit. Credit nominal account, this belongs to nominal account class, credit. Okay, Okay, so let's just put some formatting on this now. This looks promising. So let's get rid of this here. Oop. Let's get rid of that there, and we'll say so these are rows, so we can treat these the same. So that's TW flex, TW flex row, and for now TW justify between. See if that works. I did set up Tailwind with the TW prefix, didn't I? Oh, no. So on some other sites I'm combining Tailwind with some of the frameworks like Materialize for some of the features, but in order to prevent any collisions I set a prefix of TW. It's a thing you can do with Tailwind, but it means you prefix all of this with TW to stop a collision. Just got into the habit of doing it, but I'm not using Materialize here, so I can take them out. Yeah, sorry, there they are, because I've made the screen wide. So opening balance 10, and then sales 120. So is that what I wanted? There's only one transaction, isn't there? So let's go into the seeder now. Let's just create a few more transactions here. So they belong together, so that's fine. Let's copy this. Let's just do another sales one for now. Nominal headed 2. Nominal transaction equals nominal headed 2. Nominal headed 2. Counter that now. Amount. Let's say it was 240 pounds. No, that's 360 pounds. Bank and sales, but then obviously 60 pounds sales and VAT. Let's see how that looks. Oh, need to run the migration. Okay, so we have our opening balance of 0. See that, yeah? Our opening balance of 0, the first transaction in the bank of 120, and the second of 360. So we could calculate a closing balance there. Let's just try one of the other accounts from the trial balance. So let's just reload this. Okay, yeah, so let's go to sales. So what's happened there is we've done the activity just as a list, a one-column list, as in we haven't highlighted it as a debit or a credit. I mean, it is these two, that one. So we're in the sales account. That one and that one therefore would be credits because they correspond to the bank balance, but we had to counter them, so these two would be debits. So these two would be debits. So you've got 360, 480 minus, they would be minus because they'd be on the opposite side, minus as in the opposite to these ones, and that should leave a credit 400. Now we haven't done it like that, so I'm wondering if really that's how we should have formatted it. So let's change the format. So each one of these is a column. So let's say that's the debit column. How can we do this? So you remember on the database table, what are we running at time wise? So you remember at the database table we say the default column, is it? For the account? Just default, okay. So we can say, so let's keep the 3 columns. So we've got narrative, debit and credit. So we can say if nominal account default equals debit, thing is, it needs to be inside the div, that. And then we can say we can put the balance in there, can't we? But we don't need it inside the div now. Okay. And then we can do the same for the credit. If the default equals credit. So it's still going to show the column, but it'll only show the value if it's that's the default for that column. So then we need to do the same for here. So we have a narrative, which is going to be, well, that's fine. That's going to be that. So now we need to say div. So we need the if statement inside there. So if, so it's this if statement. If the credit nominal account ID is this one, that means the corresponding one is a debit one, so it appears here. So we should be able to move that into there. Oh, what did I just do then? Do that, get rid of that, and then we'll just copy this and do the same here. Make it to a debit. Okay. So let's see if that gives us anything. Okay. So this is looking better now. So we have this is the sales account. Now sales is, the default is credit, so that's fine, so that's on the right. And we're crediting to the VAT account, and we've debited to the bank balance. I know that's what's happening, but that doesn't feel right. It feels like it should be the other way around, so that I can add this and this and this here and get a balance here of 400. So I'm just going to swap that round. Okay, that looks more like what I want, because now if you add up both columns, so this is sales, I need to put let's just stick that in there. Let's just put a bit of a bigger class than that. Yeah, bit bigger size. Okay. So sale. Oh, that's within the flex row. So let's take them out there. So sales, opening balance, and we have, yeah, the order's not right obviously with the timings. I think because they were created so close together there might not actually be a difference, but anyway, come back to that. But the balances will be right. We'll have 480 in this column, 80 in this column, which leaves us with a net in this column of 400, which is correct. So let's go back to the bank balance. So that's just got a net, because the only thing we did with that was put money in. So that's the 480, that's fine. Let's go to the VAT, and that's 80 on the right, which is the liability. So that's fine. I think we'll end this one here. What we've done is basically created this breakdown list of each nominal account, but we need to refine this a bit more. We need to put the date it was last updated. We need to make sure it doesn't pull in any old transactions that have been already updated, the opening balance. So there's a few more things to do, but essentially this works fine for now. And the other thing we've done, we haven't really built on it as yet, but it'll be good for next time, is we've created this new nominal header class. So this is going to allow us to group nominal transactions together and then assign them to one of the ledgers that we talked about, which we haven't got to this time, but hopefully we will next time. So that's good for now. I'm happy with that. Oh, we also refactored some of the code, didn't we, and tidied up the nominal controller. So we'll leave it for there. Thanks for watching this video. If you liked it, please obviously click the like button. If you want to see more of this, please click the subscribe button. And I can see this particular one going on for a long time, just purely because of the nature of what it is and the complexity that we can introduce into an accounts program. So hopefully up to now this has been insightful for you anyway, to see perhaps how accounts work underneath the hood. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.